Let me do a bit of an oral review. That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Do a bit of an oral review, and just there's a nuance of depth here in Rabbi Tzadok that I think it's easy. I realized this morning that it's easy to mistaken for something more superficial. We spoke about a number of things. We'll just give a couple of examples that he gave. One example that he gave was the fact that there were certain Jews that were thrown out of the Machane Yisroel and couldn't be part of the Machane Yisroel, and there are certain Jews that were allowed to stay in. Talk about when we were traveling in the Midbar. And who was thrown out? The Motzi Shemra, those that spoke lashon hara. They have to go chutz l'machane. Tzaras. A betzora is the type of a tumah that even kishabes hamikdash hayakayim they couldn't stay in Machane Yisroel. Why? Because a betzora comes from lashon hara. So Rabbi Tzadok explained. Join us. Closer the better. So Rabbi Tzadok explained phenomenally that Metzora comes from the chet of lashon hara, and lashon hara is the type of chet that, even though on the one hand we seem to be, we're dashboy, and people aren't careful enough about lashon hara. We all know we need to be more careful, but it doesn't seem like it's such a. But that for that aver you get thrown chutz l'machane. Mashen came Esav, which comes, Chazal say, from being shakua b'taiva. That means you do all kinds of things wrong. Shakua b'taiva is not here. Shakua b'taiva is there. Mm-hmm. So you do all kinds of things wrong. Nevertheless, although you can't be in Machane Shechina, you can be in Machane Yisroel. Haloi davarhu. It's a tema how this can be.
That's the point.
Dovid HaMelech, so he got involved in a pretty heavy scandal there with Bat Sheva. And as I pointed out a couple of weeks ago, the whole rest of his life, the whole Sefer Tehillim, he was trying to get back in. Al tashlicheinu milfunecha. Ruach kodesh al tikach mimenu. Hotzia mimasker nafshi l'hodos shmecha. He was consumed by this. This was a pretty serious scandal. Nevertheless, somehow or another, the Gemara says, "Ha'omer Dovid HaMelech chata toyahu." He did do a chet. He did do tshuva. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we learned the Gemara said that I'm going to forgive you now, but you're not going to have an ois b'chayecha. You're only going to have an ois b'chayesh shloima. Su sha'ar Moshechem Yavei Melech HaKavod, that they only opened up for the chesed of Dovid HaMelech. So it comes out that Dovid HaMelech, with his whole scandal, was still on the in, and the guy who speaks lashon hara is completely on the outs. So says Rabbi Tzadok, let's say God forbid some chief rabbi or something today would do some kind of a scandal. So let's say the scandal would be, we caught him, he talked lashon hara. Okay, but that's part of the job. I mean, what do you mean? That's a scandal. But if there would be a scandal of taiva, so it would be unforgivable. It would be unforgivable. And I'm not talking from our point of view that this is true. By the way, this is a chil Hashem, and I or certainly not Rabbi Tzadok is justifying any type of scandalous behavior. But if we could permit ourselves to look at it at a sophisticated level for just a moment, just allow us to see the sophistication. The pshat is that the guy who's talking lashon hara has a chasarn deep inside. There's something wrong with his leiv tov. Mm. Whereas the scandalous who fell into a story with Bat Sheva because he saw a beautiful woman on the porch, so that's bad. But it's sof kol sof. It doesn't necessarily comment on the pnimius of that person. Doesn't mean he's not an aver. Doesn't mean he's not going to go to hell for it. It just means that it doesn't necessarily it doesn't necessarily speak about the deep part of a person. It's a taiva. So that's the zav that stays in the Machane Yisrael. Look, you can't go into the Machane Shechina, but you do stay in the Machane Yisrael. And then there's the Baal Lashon Hara, which is much deeper. So there's this sort of the earthly way of looking things, the way the Beis Din looks at things, is the Beis Din has no koach to look at the lave of a person. That's not their job. That's not their mandate. That's not their ability to look at the deep. Whether that. Therefore, even if a person does tshuva gemura, Beis Din can't exonerate them. That's nice. That'll help you in Olam Haba. We don't know what's complete tshuva. We don't know what's not complete tshuva. But it is important to know that on a real level, let's talk about an Olam Haba level. So there's this difference, and that's the part, the pnimius and the chitzonius. See, like the Gemara says, the famous Gemara, Bavasar Daf Yud and Psachim, the Gemara says that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, by the way, was considered the Tzaddik Hador in his time. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi had a son, Rabbi Yosef, and Rabbi Yosef had an after, what's it called, a near-death experience. So much so they thought he was dead, the Gemara says. But then he came out of his death, and Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asked him, you were close enough to Olam Haba to see, so ma chazisa, what did you see? That's not the Reader's Digest. This is Gemara Bava Basra, right? Yeah. What did you see? So he said, famously, Olam Hafuch Re'isi, I saw an inside-out world. Hafuch, upside-down world. Yoinim Lamato, V'tachtoinim Lamala. Meaning, what is the Pasuk Pshat in that Gemara is that there's one way that we see things in Olam Haza, which is correct for Olam Haza, and there's another way that we see things in Olam Haba, which is correct for Olam Haba. In Olam Haba, things are seen according to the Pnimius Hadvar. And it comes out that there are people, and when you think about it, it's Mazazeya, this Gemara. There are people that see things that look so bad in this world. Tachtoidim. We're talking tachtoidim. We're talking about a very low level of tachtoidim. Tachtoidim doesn't mean low. Tachtoidim means the bottom. The bottom. So the bottom of society, the dregs of society. Tachtoidim in Olam Haba Labala. And El Yoinim means the people that we give all the cover to are sometimes in Olam Haba. This is what he saw. Are Labata. Why? Why should it be like that? Not just because we live in an olam of sheker. We do, but what is it? What's the obek of living in an olam of sheker? The obek is we live in a world which is designed. It's a world of gashmias, so it's designed to be displayed, portrayed, and judged by its external appearance. That's the metzias of this world. It's a metzias. You go to a store to buy a piece of furniture. You go to buy a car. You kick the tire. That's what you do. The chitzonius, it's very difficult in this world, unless you have like Ruach HaKodesh or something, to even know somebody's Yiras Shamayim. Even if you're saying this person davens well, what do we mean by that? We mean he chuckles, he comes. We're not talking about like the Obek Hadover. Whereas Olam Haba, you understand what I'm saying? It's not a better or worse. It's just a different gisha towards the whole thing. Olam Haba is all about the pnimius. This chitzonius doesn't even make any difference. In Kabbalistic terms, the chitzonius is called the kalipa, and the pnimius is called the pri. The world is the olam of Asiya. When we talk about the olamus of the world, Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya. Asiya is a kalipa. Asiya is a kalipa. We're living in a kalipa. It's a metzias of a kalipa. It's not necessarily even a bad thing. It's just a metzias. Kalipas could be good. Kalipas could be good. I have a chiddush, which means a lot to me, maybe not so much to you. But whenever I give an example of a kalipa, I always talk about an orange peel. I always give that example. The orange peel, it's pretty, it's nice, it's a good thing, the orange peel. Some say even has vitamins in it. You can make cakes out of it. But the point is that it protects the orange, and you can keep an orange in an orange peel for days and days, maybe weeks on the table. It's fine. You take off the orange peel, you put it in a half hour, an hour, it's dried out. It's not something you can do. So that's the example of kalipa. Recently, as I finished, I realized that a better example of a kalipa is an eggshell, because it's not an egg without an eggshell has no form. It has no koach. It has no. It's. So that the klipa is a bracha. It's a bracha. So what we have here in the Haza is a bracha of klipa. It's not a chasar. Now, so hence you can understand, like on the olam haba level, Dovid HaMelech, kol omer Dovid HaMelech chata toyahu. He did a chet, but that chet was on the chitzonius. How did we see it? Says Rabbi Tzadok. How do we know that his pneumius was good? How was he vindicated? How was it proven that his pneumius was good? The answer is that Shlomo HaMelech stood by the doors of the Beis HaMikdash, Sushar Mershechem. He showed HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Zachor Chaste David Avi, remember the Chesed. Chesed is the counterbalance to lashon hara. The Leiv Ra, with all the good that you can do. Look, I don't want to say anything bad, but we've seen it. We've seen people that are seem to be very chashuv people, mechubit people. They speak lashon hara. Something wrong. Something wrong with the Leiv. Even though they have all the trappings, very, very chashuv. And it's not artificial. They really do know how to learn. And they might even really do good things. Chesed is the opposite of that. A bad person can't do chesed. A bad person can't do real chesed. He can do real chesed and do bad things, but he can't be a bad person. So you can do chesed, you can do bad things, but you can't be about chesed. So Dovid HaMelech, Zachor Chaste David, Shlomo HaMelech tried something very, very unique with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he said, look, open up the doors to the Beis HaMikdash meeting. Let the shlit'a be shiur on Klal Yisroel. That's really what he was asking. And look, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like we say at the Elah, look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, look at Dovid HaMelech's previous, and don't look at his ma'asim. Look at it from an olam haba point of view, and not from an olam haza point of view. Says the Gemara that the doors of the Beis HaMikdash opened, v'hushcheru pneihem shel oivei David. So Eitan Yehuda asks, what does that mean, hushcheru pneihem? You ever ask that? What does that mean, hushcheru pneihem shel oivei David? That their faces became blackened. The whole time they were saying, David is a nothing, he's a choteh, he's a scandalist, and they had a good point. And all of a sudden when the Beis HaMikdash's doors open, hushcheru pneihem. Meaning what? He didn't do a bad thing? So the pshat is, where they were hushcheru pneihem, so I'll just read you the Rabbi Tzadok here. That's actually where we left off. Al Kain, kishinisgalu chaste David hanemonim, hishchiru pneihem. The niskale, because it became revealed at this moment, shahashachrus haya bohem, that they're the ones with the shachrus. Meaning, once we switch the channel to move from judging al pi chitzonius to judging al pi nimios, so who's shachar and who's loving? So these apparently these enemies of Dovid HaMelech were Shena Yidlach. Dovid HaMelech, Bat Sheva. They were. Dovid HaMelech came across as for the last part of his life as being sort of grungy, sort of grungy. But here's the Gemara says this is what Yosef and Rabbi Yisroel ben Levi said. But if we're looking at it now, all of a sudden we're standing by the doors of the Beis HaMikdash, and we flip everything around, and we see things from an olam haba point of view. Everything is convexed. So then, where's the shachris? The elyonim lamala, elyonim lamata, v'tachtonim lamala. If we're looking at the pneumias, they saw that the shachris was with them. Why was there shachris with them? Black. Shachris is black. Because they're the ones that were talking lashon hara. Rabbi Moimrim Lanafshi Ein Yeshuasa Belikim. Zu Doeg Vachi Teufel Shoy Bedaber Al Vaisa Bat Sheva, says the Gemara. The Rabbi Moimrim Lanafshi. What I did, Dovid HaMelech, after he died, the statement was, what I did was an Avera, I did Tshuva, I cried for the rest of my life, but it was in the chutz. It was in the taiva. What you did, that you talked about me, this is something deeply wrong with your lave. And hushkur pneim shel. So one doesn't justify the other, but all of a sudden, once we moved into the realm of the pneumius,
tables were turned.
Tables were turned. And what was left was it didn't bother you to talk about talk. I just think like a personal thing again. Like we have to be very careful, with any writings of Rabbi Tzadok, not to make it, not to justify anything. But sometimes, if we do something wrong, we're human beings. Right? If we do something wrong, we have to stop ourselves. We have to do tshuva. We have to, we ate something we shouldn't. We shouldn't have eaten, whether begashmius or baruchnius. So you have to do tshuva. I think if we find ourselves like talking lashon hara, like really like being negative about somebody, I think that it's at that point where you have to stop and you have to ask yourself, well, what's going on here? What's going on with my pneumius? Because it's not a taiva. Control yourself, no, for sure. But this is not a question of control yourself. This is a question of like what's wrong over here. This needs a real. It doesn't mean that you can't be masakin. Can be masakin, but this needs a real tikkun. Now, this gets to be real fun here. V'chein Amalek. Get to Amalek. V'chein Amalek, right? This week's parsha.
It's on top of 320 for what it is.
Top of 320.
Page 320.
V'chein Amalek. We learned at the beginning of this section here. Zorak, lashon of the Tanchuma, Kitrig Amalek Mashachatach Miloiseyem, Yomar Tulma Shebacharta. Amalek pointed to the Jews and said, as Rabbi Tzadok explained before from the Gemara Pesachim, that Klal Yisroel allows Zavim. This was one of the Tanchuma says this was the taina of Amalek, which was a deep taina. They allow Zavim, a certain type of tumah. They're not so holy, the Jewish people. So what's Amalek saying? Amalek's pointing to the Esav comes from taiva. It's pointing to the scandalous behaviors of the Jewish people. And Amalek is saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, why are you choosing the Jews over us when they allow Zavim? Look at all the taivas and look at all the averas that Klal Yisroel does. Now, like Amalek, we know Amalek as killers. What were they really thinking that they should be the chosen people? So the answer is yes. Esav, Amalek is Esav. Amalek comes from Esav, grandson. Esav considered himself to be a more chashuv person than Yaakov. Let's internalize this. Not as a faker. Esav, in many ways, was a shener yid than Yaakov. Does this sound terrible?
Sounded compelled.
Yeah, but you see, we have been understanding it, and this is where I started off by saying, let's not take something deep and make it to something we're familiar with, which is sometimes superficial. We understand Esav, all the things that we know about Esav. We know that he said, I'm not going to get married till I'm 40 because my father Yitzchak didn't get married till I'm 40. So hello, your father Yitzchak was a tzaddik, you're a playboy. What do you be having yourself? We also know that Esav's head was buried in the Maris HaMachpelah. I think what we need to do is stop seeing him as a faker and seeing him as a kalipa. Meaning, it's not I think you meet Esav. If you meet Esav, you would say, okay, look, this is a chashuv person. I think we would all like stand up if Esav walked in the room
And run the other way.
Right. I don't know if he's walking in with a machine gun and a balaclava. I think Esav is there's a certain chashuv to him. Yaakov had to battle something very, very deep here. Was Yaakov Yoshev Ohalin? Esav was the Sada. Sada is Bachutz. Yaakov was Bifnim. This wasn't a question of a faker, as opposed to a sincere person. It was a question of Dovid HaMelech and Doeg v'achitoifel. It was a question of, are we going to look now at the pneumius, or are we going to look at the chitzonius? Because Rabbi Tzadok,
In fact, Esav would even look more sincere, you would see.
yes,
He's a chitzonius when
from anything that we would see.
That's why I said he would stand up when he comes in, because you would appear to you that he's really a very, very big.
Look, he fooled no one less important than Yitzchak. And if he fooled Yitzchak, I guarantee you he would have fooled us. And millions of others. It would have been, like a big guddle. A question, guddle Esav. No question about it. And Yaakov, not so pashut. Well, we know about Yaakov. It's not so pashut. But we're trained, the pictures are that Yaakov looks like the tzaddik, and Esav looks like, the bow and arrow and Savior. But the emes, the truth of the matter is that it was that Amalek. Look at this sentence here. Umistama chashav. Let's talk about Amalek here. Amalek is even worse than Esav in the sense that this is Esav to the nth degree. Mistama chashav shu atzmai mugdar b'zayoser miYisrael hamulim. Amalek saw themselves as more mugdar, more careful about the inyanim of arayos and taiva than Klal Yisrael, because they may have been. It may have been. You see, we look at Amalek as a bunch of stinkers, but the fact of the matter is that Amalek the hanhaga of Amalek may have been not fake, but may have been very, very mugdar. It may have come across as very, very halik.
But what had nothing to do with the actual word.
In Pnim they weren't, but they weren't. That wasn't their avoda. They weren't osik in the Pnim. They were osik in the chutz. Mm-hmm. Let's say you walk into, 14th century Vatican. So with all the, what are you going to see? You're going to see, you're going to hear the choirs of the spiritual songs. You're going to see hundreds of men that are involved in worship and celibacy and scandals are scandals. We have scandals too. I'm not but the fact of the matter is that it fooled a couple of billion people throughout history. So it's not just a matter of fooling. Yesh b'zeh the Kalipa. In regards to the Kalipas, so there's emes of that Kalipa. The Kalipa is very, very strong. So much so that Amalek can look at Klal Yisrael and say, they're the chosen people? Look what we've done for the world. Look what we've done. Who has the Kedusha? Who has the Torah? It's hard for us to digest this. I know it's hard for me to say it because it's so different than everything we want to think. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, a scandal's notwithstanding, but in terms of Kalipa, they're looking at Klal Yisrael and they're saying that, what are they better than us? And what does it take such a deep intellectual resolve to understand? Yes, but there's a pneumius here, and the pneumius you're only going to see in certain. Did you ever hear of a Catholic that gave up his life not to become a Jew? You're only going to see it when it comes to a bechina of Mesiras Nefesh. You're only going to see it when it comes to Leiv Tov and Chesed.
Removing the kippah. Once you remove the kippah.
Try to remove their kippah, yeah. So.
No, once you remove the kippah, that's what you say.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And those things are subtle, though. Chaste Dovid HaMelech. So it's subtle. I don't think we should fool ourselves to try to make it easy. It's not an easy thing. The Kalipa is very thick, and the Pnimius is very deep. Where the distinction between the men and the boys is at a very, very deep place. Ad kedei kach, Mistaba chashav that at least Amalek thought of himself, Shehu atzmai mugder b'zeh yosim Yisroel amu. They're allowing zavim. They have this kind of tumult. We would never allow in the church the type of taiva that goes on. Valzen Nemar Chashafti Yirmiyahu said, Ani Chashafti Esav Galicius Mistarav. Yirmiyahu said that when it comes to Esav, the only way to criticize Esav is to get deep, deep into the nister of Esav. It's only in the depth of his lave that he's different. Rav Hirsch makes the point over and over again that we can't. They were identical twins. You can't tell the difference between Yaakov and Esav. So it's not the pshat. When his head was buried in the Maris HaMachpelah, that wasn't because he was a good faker. That was, you don't get buried someplace because he faked that one good, let's put his head in the Maris HaMachpelah. No, the head is given good. That's the pshat. Is it the head? The head was the head meaning the chitzonius, not the lave.
The head versus the lave.
Right, it was the head versus the lave. His lave couldn't be buried in Maris HaMachpelah, but that was real. That was real that his head was buried. It was not like, he did a job on God, this one. It was real. His head belonged with the Avos. It's wild. Bilam, Va'amalek, Shrosham Beklipa Achas. Bilam was another one.
What aspect of Esav's head belonged with the others?
Because the head is the intellectual resolve to do the right thing, even if your Pnimius is not good, which the Avos mastered too. Except they have the Pnimius also. Their whole goof was buried. They came to a point of Yibayis and Michutz Titzapena, which incidentally is the pshat in that Mishkan. You got Yibayis and Michutz Titzapena. There's a Pnimius and a Chutzarnas. So Bilam was another one. Bilam was a Navi. And here we get into something very, very amok. Klipa achas. Bilam and Amalek, klipa achas. Hu hayanavi umas ha'elam. V'gam hu al davar zeh nismas einai. Amar mishu hu kadosh. Remember that Gemara? Gemara says in Nika Lamed Aleph.
Definitely he gave credit to Nesha.
When he saw the Pnimius.
Yeah.
This place marked for me now. Darash Rabbi Avo. Gemara Nika Lamed Aleph. My deceiving. Mi mana afar Yaakov umispar es rova Yisroel. Something the Bilam said. Mi mana afar Yaakov umispar es rova Yisroel. Malamed. Sha'akadosh Baruch Hu yoshev v'sofer es revi'oi sehem shel Yisroel. Masai tavai tipa sha'at tzadik noitzer hemena. So the Gemara says that Bilam had a glimpse at the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sits and watches the sexual intercourse of every Jew, and he's Yoshev Sofer, and he counts every tipa, as Revi Yosem Shal Yisrael, Masai Tavai Tipa Shat Tzadik Noitzer Himena. When is the tzaddik going to be created? Bilam saw this Metzias of Hashem, and he, what kind of thing is that? That's what the Bilam said. Lo yafeh. In other words, from Bilam's point of view, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wasn't mugdar. He was voyeuristic. What are you doing? How's that? Nismas Eino Shal Bilam. Mishu tar v'kadosh, u'b'sharsav tahar v'kadoshim. Talking about Hashem. Tahar, kadosh, b'sharsav tahar v'kadoshim. Yatzitz b'davar zeh. He's going to be involved in the Revi'osav Shal Yisroel. Miyad nismas Eino deceiving u'ma gever shasum ha'ayin. So, what does that mean? It means that it doesn't feel right, it doesn't look right, it doesn't sound right. So Bilam went so far as to criticize HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh v'tahar. This is what you're looking at. This is what you're involved with. So it says Rabbi Tzadok, B'staba hayahu mugdar b'zeh b'yoser. The pshat is that probably Bilam was mugdar b'zeh b'yoser. He was very, very careful about these things.
But he wasn't.
At the end.
Oh, okay.
Bilam had a whole life.
So there was a donkey?
The end.
The
The end, he says, Sofo paratz gadar arayis. Because at the end, the previous shows. But Bilam walked around his whole life as a holy man.
Holier than thou.
But he wasn't faking. He wasn't faking. He was a holy man from a world's, from a Kalipa point of view, from an Olam Haza point of view. He was a holy man. It's clear to me that Bilam was in direct competition in Shemayim with Moshe Rabeinu. Well, Moshe Rabeinu's battle in the heavens was with Bilam. It's clear to me. That's what the Parsha of the Torah is talking about. Well, Parshas Balak is all about that. It was a battle for the Yeshua, for the Mashiach. Look, Balak was the grandfather of Rus, the grandfather of Dovid HaMelech, Balak. Bilam was from Cham. Bilam came from Cham, Ben Noach, where the tikkun had to be. Moshe Rabeinu, it was on the chitzoniyos, he didn't have it so much. He didn't have it so much. He had born and raised in the Beis HaMitzri and married to an Isha HaKushis, and he didn't have the chitzoniyos. He had the previous. Bilam had the chitzoniyos. If you would have seen Bilam and Moshe next to each other, chances are, if you're electing a gadol, you would have elected Bilam.
Charisma.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking that the famous Chazal said that when Paroi didn't know what to do with the Jews, so he asked Bilam and Esav and Eov and Yisroel. These were the holy men of the time. Why didn't he ask Moshe? He trusted Moshe. I don't think he saw him in that light. I don't think he saw him in that light. Yisroel was a holy man, and Bilam was a holy man, and we would see them. What is a holy guy? This is a holy man. But and they weren't faking. He was mugdar mistama. Not that he thought. You see, by Amalek, he said he thought mistama hayahu mugdar b'zeh b'yoseh. That he was very, very careful about these things. He lived in a sort of a holy life. B'sofo paratz gadar arayis kima maymake libay be'emes loikein. You can't ignore the very, very deep point of the Omek Halei. Eitzel Yisroel behapech. And here's the hard truth about Klal Yisrael, which is just as difficult to swallow, maybe worse. It's one thing to be able to accept that Bilam acted in a very holy way, but it's hard to accept that because it's different than our picture. But here's the other more difficult thing. Eitzel Yisrael behapech mimamaki leiv davut b'Hashem. Deep inside, They are Dovid b'Hashem. Avshalamaris ayin loy kain bo'elam hazeh. But they don't always look so good. Jews aren't always as pretty. We're just not good we're just not so good on the Kalipa part. So the Torah is demanding a certain חיצוניות for us, make a Kiddush Hashem, look good and talk nicely, and I don't know, like we all get very frustrated that we're not always so good on this level. I mean, the Avos were, their whole goof was, the whole goof and rosh head lave was we have good lave tov, and hard for the goyim to see our pneumius, which it's hard for the goyim to see our pneumius. Why should we expect them to do that? They're going to look at their chitzonius because they're coming from a chitzonius point of view. So we have to go and be careful about the chitzonius, for sure.
Look at the caricatures of the Jews throughout history.
Exactly.
That's what they see.
That's what they got. So I'm not justifying them, God forbid, but that's what they see. And it's so late, when we. This is not our strength. The chitzonius is not our strength. Our strength is in the pneumius. Now, you have to make a choice between the pneumius and the chitzonius. I'll tell you how to choose. If you're talking about olam hazeh, go with the chitzonius. If you're talking about eternity, then go with the pneumius. When the chitzonius is good, but the pneumius is bad, eventually it's going to be bad. Eventually it will become exposed. Gilu mistarav, Yisroel said, shel Esav harasha. Where you have to, Mashiach is going to come, this was his nevuah, he's going to reveal the hidden parts of Esav. Yaakov, so there will come a time when people will see Sushar B'Shecha Busu, that the Beis HaMikdash, the shlit'a, is going to be open. This is our challenge. Our challenge is on, of course our pneumius has to be good. We can't talk lashon hara, but we have to work on the חיצוניות. Our PR is always bad. Just open the news. Read the PR is bad. We're not good at that. We're not good at it. Lo kain, avshel marzayin lo kain ba'olam hazeh. We have the pneumius, even though it doesn't look that way ba'olam hazeh. So we'll go on Wednesday. Let's just stop here because this is a place to stop. Zeh oifa meharparan mi Yishmael. It's between. I just want to say this word of introduction. Between Esav and Yaakov, which we talk about pneumius versus חיצוניות, not fake. Pneumius versus חיצוניות. Between, most confusing is Yishmael. Yishmael is a gray, very mixed, very unclear. Avram Avinu liked Yishmael even more, I think, than Yitzchak liked Esav. Avram Avinu liked Yishmael. The Kadosh Baruch Hu said to him, listen to Sarah. Sarah obviously saw the pneumius, and Avram Avinu said, Lu Yishmael Yechil Lefanach. What do I need? I don't even need a son Yitzchak. I have Yishmael. Now, he didn't see, Avram Avinu wasn't a Kalipa guy. But the answer is that Yishmael is the more confusing, Ad Yameinu. Yishmael is the more confusing part of it, most doma, if you will, to what we are. And that's where we have to, the story that we all heard as children, that Hashem offered the Torah to Esav and then to Yishmael, there's depth there. There's depth there in those mountains, because Har Seir and Har Paran represent different aspects of the Kalipa and the pneumius that what are they going to do with the Torah. So that's what we'll get to on Wednesday. If anybody sees the wire to my